This week's Torah reading details the offerings that were brought by the leaders of each of the tribes when the Mishkan, tabernacle, if you will, was dedicated. Thing is, they were, well, not voluntary, they were mandatory. Each tribal leader had to bring something, but the choice was up to him. You got to bring something, but it's up to you to decide what to bring. Interestingly, if you look in the Torah reading, it lists out what each one brought, and everything is exactly the same. Not a single letter different in the descriptions. The number of the day, on the first day, this guy, on the second day, this guy, the name of the leader, and the tribe he represented. That's it. So, how did it happen that they all ended up bringing the same thing? If it was voluntary, they'll choose to bring whatever they want, and by coincidence they all end up with the same thing? Well, here's the thing. The first day, the first leader, Naso ben Aminadav, from the tribe of Yehudah, is set to bring his offering. Okay, cool. What I'm going to bring? He thinks about it, he makes a decision. For whatever reason, that's what he decides to do. Second day, you're the tribal leader of the next tribe in line, which is Yisachar. What are you going to do? Put yourself in his place. Well, you can bring something better, but then you kind of look like a jerk, like you're trying to show him up. And then you set a one-upmanship for all the other tribes until you get to last guy all the way. Then poor leader of the lost tribe has to bring something monumental because everybody decides to do something better. And you make your friend look bad. Not just that you make yourself look like a jerk by bringing more, but you make him look bad because he didn't bring as much as you did. Or you can bring something less. Well, then you look bad. And what, do you care less? So that's not appropriate. You could bring something equivalent but different, but how could you possibly equate? You know, is a golden spoon worth more or less than a cow? And it gets into mathematics, and then there gets to be fighting amongst the tribes. You know, well, ours was better, no, ours was better. It's subjective. So he really had one option, which was to bring exactly the same thing. That's not technically true. He had options. But the only way to keep peace, not to make yourself look like you're better than the other guy, not to make yourself look like you're worse than the other guy, not to put pressure onto anyone else, and not to get into pointless bickering, the only option he had that could keep the peace was to bring exactly the same thing. But you know, that's kind of problematic, really, because, you know, suppose you go to a dinner, potluck, right? Everybody's supposed to bring a dish. And your friend brings a roast chicken, and you bring a tofu curry, and whatever, right? Well, anybody can point and say, oh, that's my chicken, that's my tofu. Okay, fine, you know, it'll be gone by the end of the evening. But what if it's something that's going to last forever? This temple's going to stand for hundreds of years, thousands of years, one would hope. Years from now, the tribe could point and say, that one, that's the spoon that my tribal leader brought. That's the spoon of Naphtali. That spoon is from the tribe of Yehudah. Well, you know, that's great. But when everybody's brought the same thing, how do you know which spoon came from Yehudah, which came from Naphtali? So if Yehudah brings a spoon and Naphtali brings a bowl, and Yisachar brings a piece of the curtain, okay, then he can feel pride, he can feel pride and point at it. And there'll be nothing wrong with that. Everybody's contributed his bit, except that it gets to fighting. Well, my curtain's more important than your spoon. No, my spoon's more important than your curtain. So they sacrificed a bit of their individuality in that regard. Nobody can point and say, that one's my spoon, because there are 12 spoons that are exactly the same. But it was worth it to them, so as not to engender fighting amongst themselves, amongst the tribes. If you look in the Torah reading, it lists out, in many people's opinion, it's the most boring Torah reading in the world. You literally read the same thing 12 times over with minor adjustments for the number of the day, the name of the tribe, the name of the leader. That's it. So why do we have to sit through this whole thing over and over again? Well, if it's in the Torah, it's there for a reason. There's an old principle called God is not Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, so the story goes, got paid by the word. So he wrote extra just get paid more. Well, God doesn't get paid by the word. He doesn't need to write something extra. If there's something extra in the Torah, it's there for a reason. It's there to teach you a lesson. And what God is saying is, you were willing to sacrifice your individuality in this regard, your claim to fame, so as to preserve the peace. I guarantee you that for the rest of history, the Torah will have you all listed in full detail, even though it is the same, word for word, letter for letter. When the Torah could just have said, on each day that each tribal leader brought this and this and this for his respective tribe. Done. No, I'm going to have it written out in full because you deserve it. And as someone who used to do Torah readings on a regular basis, I always made sure to give that part not extra emphasis, because no part of the Torah is more important than any other, so it didn't deserve extra emphasis, but it deserved to be read with a full emphasis, not rushed through like a lot of readers are wont to do, and like a lot of congregations wish they would do, because it's boring. Even if you listen to the Torah reading, you don't want to hear this. Well, you need to hear this because this is an important lesson. And God promised them that reward for the fact that they deserved the desire to maintain peace above all else. That's an important lesson right there. Don't make yourself great at someone else's expense. Look for the peace. Pursue the peace. That is the greatness of Aharon, as mentioned in the Mishnah. He was not just Ohev Shalom, he loved peace, but Rodef Shalom, chased after peace. You don't just hope for it or passively enact it or just don't start fights. Peace isn't just starting fights. You have to search after it, chase after it, make it happen. And where more appropriate a place to show this lesson than in the Mishkan, where Aharon and his descendants served and will serve again in future. Go out there and actively make the world a better place. Shabbat Shalom.